Scott Pilgrim is pretty good. A defense of Scott Pilgrim and Ramona, love of my life flowers. Hello people I don't know. You might be wondering what drove me to make a video about an over 18 years old property that isn't at all trending right now.
Note: this joke was funnier before the announcement of the Scott Pilgrim anime.
God, I'm old. Basically, I've been hearing the same hot takes about it for 10 years now, and I'm sick of them. And also, I needed something creative to do with my brain because I was going crazy for pandemic-related reasons. And you can tell by that line how long I've been writing this thing. Now that's out of the way, why is Scott Pilgrim pretty good? I'm gonna argue for that through a defense of the two main characters, Scott Pilgrim and Ramona Flowers. I'm gonna be arguing not that they're good people, but that they're good characters. Major difference there. I'm also gonna be referring mainly to the comic versions of the characters, because that's the version that I personally like the most. Well, let's get going with this. Part 1. Scott Pilgrim.
Caramel macchiato. Pilgrim.
For starters, I'd like to address some of the main points that I've seen people make, and by people, I mean myself at some point, to make the case that Scott is a shit person. Point A. Scott is a dick to women. Yeah, he kinda is. But that's not really that important for two very good reasons. Characters don't have to necessarily be good people to make interesting stories happen. And also because, you know, people make mistakes. Given the current climate, I feel it's very important to reiterate that people make mistakes. That doesn't mean that the core quality of their being is set forever. So, why is Scott a dick to women? In order to explain that, and I mean really explain that, we're gonna have to dive deeper into the relationships that he has over the course of the comic. And that is Kim Pine, Envy Adams, Knives Chow, and of course, Ramona. What was the deal between him and Kim? It was high school, she had freckles. Alright. There's a little bit more to it than that. Well, Scott met her in geography class and she played the drums, and him and his friend Lisa needed a drum player for their band. And besides her presumably sick drum skills, she had a very dry sense of humor that Scott kind of gravitates towards. And then, I believe Scott says it best.
Okay, I had to fight a dude to get with her. I fought a crazy 7-foot tall purple suited dude, and I had to fight 96 guys to get to him too. He was flying and shooting lightning bolts from his eyes, and he could make people do whatever he said automatically. He was totally awesome, and I kicked him so far he could see the curvature of the earth.
Oh, okay, Scott, we'll get into that. But, you know, besides that, they do spend a while dating while playing in a band together. They do average high school stuff, including sleeping together, which I believe is the first time for both of them. Eventually, Scott has to move away from their hometown. He and Kim have a sweet goodbye, and thus it ends. So, that's obviously not what happened, right? Well, not obviously, because it's Scott Pilgrim and you can get superpowers out of being vegan and everything works in video game logic, but yeah, that's not what happened. Spoilers, I guess. What this specific relationship tells us about Scott is that he has a tendency to warp his own memories to suit his narrative. He creates this fictional version of his past where he is clearly in the right and everyone else is clearly in the wrong. And he has a tendency to do that particularly with romantic relationships. Let's be honest, we've all done that, right? How many times have you heard someone say that, oh man, my ex was crazy? How many times have you said that? I mean, I know I have, but it was different, okay? That guy was actually crazy. I was totally justified. It's different. Either way, if that's not what happened, then what did? Well, that 80-foot tall purple suited dude was actually Kim's nerdy, scrawny, alleged boyfriend who Scott sucker punched for no freaking reason. And you know, it gets worse. That sweet goodbye with Kim never happened. Scott actually told their friend Lisa and then left it to her to tell Kim that he was moving away. Yeah. Pretty shit thing to do, right? I agree. And I think even Scott agrees. I mean, there is a reason he didn't want to remember it like that. You know, it's not that this absolves him, but it definitely makes for some interesting character conflict, right? That's quite enough about Kim. Let's move on to Envy Adams. Scott met Envy in college. She was sharing a room with this girl he knew, Julie Powers. What an icon. She was kind of a nerdy, shut-in type, but she had a dry sense of humor that appealed to him. They started hanging out and eventually dating. They formed a band together. Of course they did. Things started getting pretty serious. Like, she was the first person Scott ever said I love you to, which is a really big deal in anyone's life. It's the first long-term relationship we see him have. You know, aside from
that time after psych in the ladies' room with Monique.
Misunderstanding.
How about that time with Sandra in the ladies' room at Burwash?
Not what it looked like.
Yeah, that, which apparently happened. Carrying on, Scott starts to suspect that Envy might be cheating on him, but he never talks to her about it. Eventually, he says this.
You know, I started this thing to meet chicks and have fun. When did it turn into a band? Did I just meet the wrong chicks?
Heavy. And so he proceeds to get a haircut. Envy says this.
Get out of my life, Scott.
And it's over. Scott wallows in self-pity for about a year, which he barely remembers, by the way. Yeah, he blames the haircut for the breakup. Sure, buddy. That's what happened. That seems pretty realistic, right? And he would be right, like nothing as outlandish as what happened with Kim appears. Although what happened with Kim might be Gideon's doing, but that's complicated. Let's not get into that. Still, this is a very edited version of the truth. The way I see it, at least, the pressure from suspecting that she was cheating on him probably led him to acting like a jerk for no reason, often. There is no direct evidence of that in the comics, but I think it's likely. What leads me to believe that is that when Scott and Envy talk about their relationship in hindsight, she says this.
What about New Year's Eve? Do you remember that? We had a fight.
Like, a fight? Fight?
A fight that you started.
Well, I remember you breaking my heart.
The feeling is somewhat mutual.
Now, just because I know that you monogamous people care about that, did Envy actually cheat on Scott? We don't know. Scott says she did, but what we see is her, acting annoyed sometimes. She might have been having second thoughts about their relationship, which, happens. And the guy from the voicemail that appears right here, he might have actually just been a friend. The important thing is, Scott never asked. This is where we start to see how the passive role he plays in life really hinders him. Like, Scott never takes action for things to change. He never wants anything to change. Because he's scared. He's scared to see where change leads. He's scared to face the consequences of whatever he might do. Yeah, that not only hurts him, it hurts everyone around him. So, what's up with Knives? Well, he met her in the buzz with her mom.
Is that seriously the end of the story?
Okay. There is more to it than that. Scott starts hanging out with this teenager. And in my opinion, again, this is just my personal interpretation, this is Scott trying to hide from the pressures of the adult world, which are getting harder and harder to ignore. They hang out in pizza places, arcades, thrift shops, CD stores. Man, I miss those. And band practice. And what do all of those have in common? They're Scott's comfort zones. They're places where he can appear more cool and knowledgeable than he actually is. No wonder that she thinks that this guy is the real deal. Let's remember that Knives has exactly 0 experience with relationships. Bless her heart. If you guys are wondering what I keep looking at over here, it's the script. There's no way that I could memorize this entire monstrosity, I'm sorry. We can see pretty clearly too that as Knives spends more time in Scott's world, it starts to draw her out of her shell. She experiments with styles, starts to get really into music, and, you know, even attempts physical contact with Scott. Ooh. Now, I seriously don't think that Scott wanted anything physical here. He was happy just having someone to talk to who didn't think he was, you know, totally worthless. What he definitely did do was play with this poor girl's feelings. Like, he knew she was getting emotionally attached to him. He knew this was the first time she felt anything at all for a guy, ever. And he ignored that for his own personal benefit. And you know why? Because Knives would never challenge him. Being with Knives would never require him to change. Here's where we start to see that despite what he'll tell you, Scott's pretty selfish. And it's also another good example of one of the main lessons from his character arc, that not doing anything isn't the same thing as not doing anything wrong. And that, fellas, is where Ramona comes in. Ramona. You people should know that I'm pretty biased towards her. Like, I don't have a Ramona tattoo on my actual person for shits and giggles. I really like this character. But I'll do my best, okay? Ramona is Knives' opposite in that sense. She isn't comfortable, she isn't easy, and she beats Scott right out of his comfort zone with a warhammer. So, how does Scott meet Ramona? Well, she uses this subspatial roadway that goes directly through his brain. Yeah, really. Because she's American, I guess. And he starts to see her in his dreams. I just realized this while I was writing this script, but the first time he realizes she's real, he's in a library with Knives, which is one of the few places that Knives brought him instead of the other way around. He says it himself, that it stirs up like uncomfortable memories for him and he is not comfortable there. Foreshadowing? You know, I might be reading too much into it. How and why does Scott become so obsessed with her? Well, she literally showed up in his brain before he saw her in real life. Like, that by itself is pretty trippy and mysterious. But also, like, she's really hot and, you know, cute and alternative and shit. Have I mentioned she's American? So, okay. His motivations at first aren't the most noble. You guessed it, they are also not that important, because it actually leads him to take action for the first time in maybe his entire life. He asks her out, they hang out, make out, and then decide to take it easy for a bit. You might be wondering to yourself, when did he break up with that sweet angel Knives? So, he kind of forgot about that. We gather from this that their relationship was never really a big deal for him emotionally. Like, he never really saw her as a romantic partner. Otherwise, come on, would even he just forget? And he tries to delay the moment when he has to break it off while maintaining what he has going with Ramona, which leads to this iconic moment.
I have to go.
Our hero, everybody. This is the night when he meets Ramona's first evil ex-boyfriend. And, you know, at least in my mind, despite what an inconvenience it is, this is the moment that really brings them together. He realizes that this is someone who he can be his actual weird, broken self with. This is someone who is also trapped by their past in a way that won't let them move forward. Literally, in her case. This is what leads him to grow a goddamn backbone and actually break up with Knives. And the story actually takes off from there. He gets to know Ramona better, and they actually become really tender with each other and spend a happy few months together. That's when Ramona's more problematic exes start to come up. This shakes her, and along with Knives revealing what actually happened between her and Scott, which, you know, should have been obvious, but I guess Ramona wasn't really thinking about it, this drives Ramona away. What matters to me is that none of this is random or pointless. Every single one of these relationships helps us understand an aspect of his character and, you know, where he is in life right now. It helps us understand why he is ready to change and why he needs to change in order to keep what he's got. Scott isn't a dick to women just to serve some male fantasy, although some readers do identify themselves a little too much with our very flawed protagonist. He's like that because he still needs to grow as a person, and seeing that side of him helps us understand that. Point B. Scott is weird around the gays. This takes place in 2004. Point C. Okay, seriously, this point is admittedly going to be a little shorter than the other ones, But it's not just that. Yeah, we were all a little bit homophobic in 2004, but it's important to recognize when old media reinforces problematic things. First of all, Wallace is undoubtedly Scott's best friend, and Scott can't shut up about the fact that Wallace is gay. Maybe he thinks it gives him like street cred? I don't know. I genuinely think that at the time it was just supposed to like add to Scott's quirky persona. Believe it or not, having a gay BFF actually made you cooler in other people's eyes back then. Like, wow, you're so interesting and open-minded. Honestly, it was still kind of like that when I was in high school up until like 2014. Nobody wanted to be gay, but damn if knowing a gay person didn't make you cooler. Seriously, my mom still feels the need to mention it to everybody that her boss is gay, but you know, you should have seen her reaction when I came out of the closet. I'm doing very well, what do you mean? Anyway, it's that very safe liberalism where you accept gay people and even kind of idolize them, especially for the brownie points you get for having them around, but you don't really care to understand their experience with their sexuality. Not really. That's pretty evident when Scott says this about Ramona and her ex-girlfriend.
You and her?
Oh, relax. It was a phase.
We will get to that too.
You had a sexy face.
Scott, buddy, no. Like, I don't think I need to explain why this is bad. Lesbians already deal with enough objectification, and so do bi women. And no, being a lesbian isn't sexy. Being bi isn't sexy. And no, calling it sexy is not a good thing. This is how being LGBT gets connected with promiscuity, which in and of itself is not a bad thing, but it has a very heavy history and it is very stigmatized, so it marginalizes the community even further. And if you think the idea of girls making out is hot, congratulations, you just realized that attractive people are attractive to look at and that sex is sexy. Those people are there to entertain each other, not you. And viewing them uniquely through that lens is dehumanizing. It's like I said, just because you accept that they exist doesn't mean you actually care what it's like to be them, which means you're not, you know, treating them like humans. Huh. I guess I did explain that, didn't I? Oh, it's my video and I can do whatever I want. It's so dumb, I'm not gonna keep that. And lastly, there is this moment with Steven Stills.
Hey, man.
Sup?
Honestly, Scott, same.
God, I hate your friends.
You want to grab a drink with us and chat?
I'm freaking out a little.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'm gay. I realized I like dudes. It shocked everyone when I came out. Back in volume 5, you seemed busy, I didn't mention it.
So Julie turned you gay?
Seriously, get new ones.
Dude, you just lost me again. I think it's safe to say that that's dumb and rude, right? Yes, but it's also a thing that people actually believe. If you're gay, you must have been traumatized by the opposite sex somehow, right? Well, that's why some girls get offended when ex-boyfriends turn out gay and vice versa. Although my parents did blame the first girl I kissed and not the boy I dated before that. I'm okay, I promise. Anyway, this I'm pretty sure is meant to make Scott look like an idiot, otherwise this wouldn't be the couple's reaction. Still, it's not the best thing to make your protagonist that ignorant on LGBT issues. Then again, it was another cultural context. Having the comic acknowledgement that what he's saying is actually ridiculous is not the worst approach, especially for that point in history. You might be thinking, wow, that looks like it's a different cup of tea and her hand looks a lot pink. Yeah, it's almost like I went to make dinner and a smoothie and stained myself. Point C. Scott is a bad friend. Yeah, he's not the best, but here's why I think it ties into his character arc. Scott is a passive person because he has never had to work hard for anything, and that includes friendships. I mean, just look at how he met Wallace.
And what do you think of this class?
It's okay. Who are you? What are you doing in my house? Who are you?
Your brother let me in. Are you playing video games? Do you have any lemonade?
And this is how he met Lisa Miller, his first high school friend.
How long have you been here?
15 minutes?
And you already got beat up? You must be totally great. We should be friends.
Yeah?
Scott,
What?
visitor.
Whatever.
Well, he's obviously down there. Just go on.
I don't even know anyone in this town.
Hey,
What are you doing in my house?
Your brother let me in.
This is ridiculous. No, we can't be friends.
Are you playing video games? Do you have any lemonade?
Yes and no, we only have iced tea.
These are arguably the two best friends he has ever had, and he didn't have to work for it in the least. He's just that kind of annoying person that things work out for him magically. Well, until they don't. Anyway, he's not used to putting in the effort. Not for himself, not for anyone else. So much so that over the first few volumes, all of his friends have a lot going on, but he can barely tell. Like, Steven is in the process of coming out, Kim just got into a serious relationship for the first time in a while, just to get cheated on, with her roommate, who is one of her best friends. Oh my god, Kim gets so screwed over in this comic. Anyway, young Neil is having a full-blown existential crisis, and Knives is also pretty lost. Wallace is doing okay though. He's got a nice boyfriend, they're settling down. But you know, Scott can barely tell that's happening either. Not to say that he isn't changing or that he never does. It's just that at this point in the story, he's changing for Ramona, so he's tackling the problems that affect his relationship directly first. Meanwhile, the problems at the margins are just getting bigger and bigger. He's becoming increasingly estranged from his friends, and he still hasn't realized that he needs to come to terms with the past and his mistakes. It's not enough to forget, and it's not enough to just move on. And that's relevant to Ramona's arc too. So when Ramona leaves, that leaves only the hard stuff that he still needs to deal with. It's no wonder that he regresses and falls back onto his parents to buy an apartment, quits his job, and becomes a total shut-in. But you can't live like that forever. Eventually you need to start moving again. And so Wallace tells him to go get laid. And he latches onto that, which is why his first interactions with Knives and Envy are really awkward. But it's an important step. He's moving again, and not for Ramona this time. Also in a classically misguided way, very, very Scott Pilgrim. He starts to get involved in people's lives and starts actually getting their feelings, which is why eventually this happens.
No, Scott.
What?
We can't.
Why not? What about... Haven't you been there for me this whole time?
What? Excuse me?
Things were always so complicated with Ramona. You're so, like, uncomplicated. You've been the one constant in my life. Doesn't it make sense?
Uncomplicated? Don't you remember high school? It wasn't all cute movie romance junk, Scott.
Kim truth bombs him about how stuff really went down, and then...
Scott?
Forget it, okay? Forget I said anything. Let's forget the whole thing.
Your head.
I'm fine. Let's move on already. Let's go.
Scott, I'm sorry. Calm down. Dude.
It's the Nega Scott!
What is the deal with Nega Scott? Well, in the movie it's pretty much a throwaway gag, but in the comic we've seen glimpses of Nega Scott before this point. And he represents, well, all the negative stuff in Scott. It seems really obvious, but it's pretty important here. Nega Scott is all the uncomfortable truths, all the repressed memories, all the responsibilities he chose to forget. And at this moment, finally...
You can't keep living like this, Scott.
Leave me alone! I just need to kill him, so I can forget her and move on!
But if you keep forgetting your mistakes, you'll just keep making them again.
I don't care! It's better than having to live with myself!
This line right here, is why I think he's at least a little self-aware about how badly he messed up.
Everything you've done wrong is just gonna keep following you around, Scott. You've gotta hold on. Otherwise,
Otherwise, I don't know.
Ramona? I remember everything.
And now he's ready to get Ramona back. He's ready to be deserving of it. Ready to get the band back together and to get his life back on track. What I wanted to get across at this point is that Scott, being a bit of an entitled brat who puts all of the pressure of caring for his relationships with his friends onto his friends, is intentional, and it's not something that the comic portrays in a particularly positive light. It's something that he needs to grow out of by learning to listen and by taking people's feelings into account. And that, baby, is what we call a complex character. Part 2. Some bad stuff. Since we're here, I want to talk about some stuff in this comic that legit makes me uncomfortable nowadays. First of all, there's a lot of casual sexism. Not that much considering other comedies from the time, but it's enough that if it came out today, it would offend. A lot of bitch and slut being thrown around, this kind of permanently horny state is just the accepted boy behavior, and you know, that kind of stuff. This scene right here actually took me back to some nasty behavior that my male friends used to have.
Scott, I want to sort of explain something. That day at the mall, I was doing my laundry, okay?
So what?
So, all my regular clothes were in the wash. I was wearing that stupid little dress and all tarted up, kind of as a joke, but you couldn't take your eyes off me. And I liked it, okay?
You mean you've been dressing in an unusually sexy fashion because of me?
Yeah, I guess that's what I mean.
That's amazing!
Like, what? Just, who says this? So this stuff right here, this isn't necessary. This doesn't convey to us anything we don't already know about Scott. I guess you could argue that it drives home his selfishness, that Lisa is opening up to him and he can only focus on the pretty girl likes me part of the conversation. But I'm not gonna lie, there are other ways to convey that. He could just, you know, look at her all googly-eyed and she would sneer at him. Putting it out there that some other girl getting all decked out for you who isn't your girlfriend when you're in a monogamous relationship is amazing. Not great, you know, especially since he barely reacts to it. Like, it isn't framed at all as something that he shouldn't be thinking. Also, people use, like, toxic masculinity standards to make fun of Scott a lot, especially when it comes to him not drinking or the fact that he's, you know, kind of a coward. Another thing we should touch on is the racism thing. Oh no. You know, to quote Lindsay Ellis, I'm just a well-meaning idiot here, so take everything I have to say with a grain of salt, okay? But one of the most common complaints about the comic is its lack of diversity. So the only named POCs we have are Knives, Tamara, Jason Kim, Matthew Patel, the twins, and maybe Holly, although it's difficult to tell because of the art style what her ethnicity is supposed to be. Knives is a naive, edgy teen. So is Tamara. Jason Kim is an asshole to Kim, and so is Holly. The twins are super evil and they talk in unison. And Matthew Patel is a pathetic ex who never got over his 7th grade girlfriend. Not great, right? And out of those people, the one we get to know better by far is Knives, and her characterization is, well...
I saw you with your boyfriend the other day, Knives, but you didn't wave back.
That's not true at all!
Knives, you make out with the boy? Who is Stephen Chow?
No, he was white. Cute, too. I guess I was 100% mistaken.
I'm 10 times too young for a boyfriend anyway! He probably wants to cut your head off with his prized antique samurai swords. Man, my dad is so lame.
Well, that's just great!
中场在参与登記到令的幫助配方，綁定裡面相當啲人包括是處理控制，期待所有新嘅你了解不用。
What was that all about?
Man, I don't know. He was speaking Chinese or something.
I mean, not to mention she's a literal Catholic schoolgirl. She's naive to the point of farce. Like, the submissive Asian woman is already a well-discussed trope. I'm gonna leave some better videos about this in the description down below if you want to check them out. But that's not the only thing going on with Knives. Like, maybe in the first volume, she's very much the kind of submissive Asian girl breaking out of her shell. In the later volumes, she becomes the also prevalent
cool Asians.
Thank you, Mean Girls. Yes, the cool, stylish Asian girl who likes music and geeky stuff. Don't get me wrong, I think there is depth to Knives. She's grieving the end of her first big relationship and slowly realizing that that relationship was actually pretty terrible. She's trying to move on via a common friend who isn't great to her. The next guy she befriends helps her break the illusion, but the idiot who broke her heart is still hanging around and she has to deal with that. Besides, she's graduating and she's trying to figure out, you know, who she is. What's her personal style? What's her taste in music? What even are her interests? But all of that gets a backseat to, you know, some really harmful stereotypes, like the stuff with her dad and her family being super opposed to her dating a white guy. Like, I get that that's a struggle that some Asian teenagers actually do face, but also probably not the best way to portray your only major Asian character. And yeah, I'm aware that this world runs in video game logic and that having an angry samurai dude as a boss probably sounded like a really cool idea, which is why I can mostly get by this on rereads. But the other characters' families either barely show up, or if they do, they're just normal people who don't take part in the video game shenanigans. And I think that making a racially coded joke out of your only major Asian character's family is probably not the best move. And, you know, before you come for me, I know that Brian Lee O'Malley is half Korean, and that he can probably relate some of this to his own experience. But I don't think that invalidates my criticism. And then, it was time for Ramona, Love of My Life, Flowers, Part 3. Ramona, Love of My Life, Flowers.
She's on another level.
Okay, so we've established that I'm pretty biased towards Ramona, right? But I'm gonna legit do my best here to address the criticism that I've seen lobbed towards this character. Alright? Alright. Starting with point A. Ramona is a Manic Pixie dream girl. Okay, right off the bat, I'm just gonna throw it out there. No, she isn't. The MPDG, Manic Pixie Dream Girl, is a term that has been thrown around a lot in recent years. So much so that it's almost a cliche to bring it up. A lot of complex female characters have been thrown into that box because, you know, they're all quirky and hipstery, right? And the big problem for me is that being quirky and, you know, not the main character isn't the same as having an MPDG on your hands. For me, the most reductive aspect of the fantasy is that however different this character may be, they only exist in this narrative to further the development of the main character / love interest. You know, make them see the meaning of life or something. But wait, I hear you saying in the back. Didn't you just spend God knows how long telling us that Ramona helps Scott break out of his inertia and value something other than himself? Yes, I did. But here's the thing, most things in a well-constructed story serve to either, you know, further the plot, express the theme, or develop the main character's arc, or, you know, one of the main character's arcs anyway. And Ramona does play into that, like she helps Scott realize that the way he's been living life won't always get him everything that he wants. But she isn't just an empty vessel covered in colored hair and stylish clothes. She has a considerable amount of drama going on in her life. I mean, part of it is the premise of the damn comic.
Ramona, what the hell are you? Your hair.
Girl's got baggage, and baggage that ties into her main character flaw, which is Ramona doesn't know how to accept her own happiness. Let's look at this for a moment, shall we? I mean, the girl has never had a good relationship in her life. The only guy she didn't break up with was this guy Doug, who, according to her, was a bit of a dick. Wow, the lighting just got better all of a sudden. I wonder if someone forgot to turn the ring light on for about 15 minutes of this recording process. No biggie. I'm not annoyed at all. First guy she ever dated was Matthew, who she realized later on she only ever wanted to date for superficial reasons. Such reasons being, he wasn't some conventionally attractive white jock, and he had some dope mystical powers. Which is kind of a shit reason to be into someone in the first place. Not that you need a super deep reason, like most first dates happen with very limited knowledge of the other person. But if you're dating someone for what they aren't and what they can do for you instead of, what they are, is never great. Second up, we have Lucas Lee, who basically bugged Ramona until she agreed to go out with him, which, let's admit, is a dick move and something men should never do. It doesn't look like she was ever into him, which comes as no surprise when she later dumped him for Todd. And he was heartbroken, and it looks like she didn't give herself enough time to, think about it. She didn't want to face the fact that maybe she was the bad guy in that situation, so she kept moving forward. When it came to Todd, he seemed to fit Ramona a lot better. He was, somewhat full of himself, but really anti-establishment, which seemed to be something she was into at the time. But, soon she found out he was prone to overly dramatic gestures. That seemed to be the thing that pushed her away. That and the fact that he was moving to a faraway college, which frankly is a move that I kind of approve. And once again, Ramona keeps moving forward. Around here we start to realize that Ramona is never single for long. Maybe she doesn't quite know how to be. Which is something that I can personally relate to, as someone who got into a committed relationship that lasted for a while and then crashed and burned epically when I was relatively young. I can totally relate to the feeling of forgetting what you're supposed to do when you're single. But it's important to be alone. Rushing into things can lead to relationships that your heart isn't really into. Case in point, Roxy. We don't learn a whole lot about their relationship in the comics. What we know is that they dated in college and that it seems to have been intense.
So what? They used to be friends a long time ago.
You'd almost forget I'm talking to Ramona Flowers, expert on cheating. Are you blind?
How does a girl get to be a girl like you?
Sure. It's just sad and pathetic. You do it every time. But hey, it's no business of mine.
No kidding. I haven't seen you since college, Roxy, and you show up spouting conspiracy theories as usual.
This sucks! Why are we even fighting?
Because you're a whiny little bitch?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just holding back because I'm still in love with you.
Yeah, or maybe you're just a lousy excuse for a ninja.
Yeah.
Half ninja. Half ain't good enough, huh?
Come on, I didn't mean it like...
Give it a rest, Ramona. You're not my mom.
Roxy, don't.
I hope you and your 2.4 children are very happy together. Congratulations.
Okay, so I'm gonna infer what I can from that. It sounds like Roxy was always a bit jealous. Now, Ramona might have actually cheated on her, but from what she says about, Roxy always spouting conspiracy theories, it sounds like she was always suspecting Ramona, whether or not she had actually done something. Now, I've always wondered about Roxy's line, half ain't good enough. I'm pretty sure it's a dig on Ramona's bisexuality, and yeah, I know that she says it was just a phase, but I'll get into that. But I think it might have been based on something Ramona said to her. Something about half liking her, maybe. But it's pointless to speculate. The important thing is that they were very much drawn to each other. So much so that Roxy is the only evil ex that Ramona is at all inclined to hang out with. Like, they talk at the restaurant Scott works at, she goes to Roxy's art exhibit, they even make out at some point. But things were always a little tense. Based on personal experience, I'm inclined to believe that Roxy was always afraid Ramona was gonna leave her for a man. And that seems to have happened, actually. The whole thing just left a bitter taste in Ramona's mouth. She actually looks rattled when they're fighting in subspace. Maybe that was the first time she realized she was, or at least she felt like, the villain of the story. After an undetermined amount of time, we get to the twins. Maybe Doug was in between them and Roxy? No, I don't know. We don't know a lot about this relationship either, but just from the vague outline we get, this is Ramona's biggest dick move. So, what do we know about her and the twins? Well, they're aware she likes tequila.
We thought you might need this.
Oh, you know me so well.
There's no shame in being yourself, Ramona. All this here, this is temporary. Real life's waiting.
Okay, so it's not just the tequila. They seem to have dated long enough that at least Kyle knows her pretty well. This is the core of Ramona's problems. She never gives herself enough time to process anything. She keeps moving forward, always and no matter what. No need to take anything too hard if everything's temporary, right? I also think she has this very millennial feeling that she was meant for great things, for an exciting life. So, stableness, domestic happiness, it all seems a little boring, a little passé. Not enough. Anyway, what else do we know about them?
And how is Ramona this morning?
She's fine, and you guys are cheating. I thought you were supposed to fight me one at a time.
Ha! Cheating is why we joined the guild in the first place.
You mean the league?
Whatever. We joined because Ramona cheated on us.
The two-timing slut.
She cheated on you? Seriously?
She played us against each other.
And since the day we discovered her treachery, we vowed always to work together.
So this is Ramona's biggest crime. I mean, cheating on one brother with the other, that's just some soap opera level villainy. Alright, this might just be me, but I have this vision of post-Roxy Ramona realizing for the first time that she has been leaving a trail of broken hearts behind her and that it isn't always justified. And she's constantly drunk on tequila, and one day she accidentally makes out with her current fling's brother, but she can't make herself care. I mean, she's already an asshole anyway, why bother? And you know, this might just be me trying to see her in the best light possible. Or, you know, projecting a tiny little bit. But if there is something that we can learn from Scott and Envy's relationship, is that a relationship always has two sides. Things probably looked a lot different from Ramona's perspective. Well, to me, that was her embodying what people had told her she was her entire life. Almost like an Easy A moment.
People thought I was a dirty skank. Fine. I'd be the dirtiest skank they'd ever seen.
Or if there were any youngsters watching this, think about Cassie from Euphoria saying, "Fine, then I'm the villain." Doesn't make what she did okay though. And she knows that. But she can't quite bring herself to face what just happened, so she runs away. And who does she meet? Gideon. Gideon embodies all of her big dreams, her larger-than-life adventurous spirit. Also, he handily summarizes their relationship for us.
You're not from around here. Your eyes, they've seen things.
That almost makes it sound like a romantic meet-cute. And then Ramona gives us this.
Why do you even want me back? You spent our whole relationship pushing me away. You didn't want me until I left.
And this is how it ends.
Ramona, what the hell are you? Your hair.
Like this, we have a good idea about how their relationship went. What Gideon tells her when they first meet is exactly what she wants to be told. It reframes her baggage not as something she has to be ashamed about, but as experience, things she has seen. But throughout the meat of their relationship, he probably treated her somewhat how he treats Envy.
I'm just tired. I've been training and learning choreography for weeks. I've tried on 71 dresses. Can't we just sit down for an hour and have a drink? The outfit is fine. I'm ready.
Natalie, it's your debut. It's the opening of my special place in Toronto. Your outfit is important. I've had some very promising young designers literally chained to sewing machines for months. And you know dressing you up like a doll is very fulfilling for me, sexually.
Seems like it's about the only thing.
What was that?
Nothing.
I mean, probably a little bit closer than that. You know, he seems to have had a huge impact on Ramona after all. But you get the gist. He was very distant and cold, relying on his manipulation skills, ability to read people, and money to keep her around. That's because Gideon doesn't see the women around him as people, but as muses. Objects of his distant admiration that he can then groom into an aesthetic ideal that he enjoys. And if you think I'm exaggerating...
Huh? Are those your evil exes?
Yes. The answer is no. You might say they're the ones who got away. They're cryogenically frozen, awaiting the future day when they'll all go out with me. I love them. And you, Ramona, are about to join them.
Jesus, dude. Anyway, the only reason he seems to care a little bit more about Ramona enough to put together a league of evil exes is that she had the audacity to walk away. He's that kind of ego monster that thinks that people should be glad just to be around him. Needless to say, it probably wasn't a great experience. I mean, all the time being neglected must have given Ramona also a lot of time to self-reflect, enough that she realized two important things. One, she had to change. She had to find someone who valued her for exactly what she was. And two, she had to get the heck out of there. And why not start by dating the polar opposite of Gideon? I mean, compare Gideon's smooth introduction to her at the party to Scott's opening line.
Hey, what's up?
Nothing.
I like your shoes.
Thanks. I got them in England.
They remind me of something, but I can't remember. What, am I dreaming? I'll leave you alone forever now.
Thanks.
And to Scott's credit, he does accept her as is. He takes the whole evil exes thing in stride. He takes her harsh reactions due to past trauma pretty well. He doesn't even seem that fazed when she makes out with Roxy, or even seems to care that she has a cat named after her ex. The thing is, just because Ramona is ready to change doesn't mean that her past mistakes are through with her. She's forced to relive every mistake she has ever made, and eventually it gets to her. She becomes convinced that Scott's having an affair with Lisa, and that's partly due to Roxy's suggestions, but it's also because, you know, she's been there. She knows she could have done it if it was her in his place. Furthermore, you see after a while that impatience starting to come back. That feeling that being there just isn't exhilarating anymore.
Queen Street, Fashion District.
So then they end up in Australia, and then they live in this weird fake town for a while, but they teleport all over the world. Then the bad guys come back, and the psychic girl makes everyone go through the Siege Perilous, and they all lose their memories except Wolverine. And he totally gets crucified on an X. And it's totally rad. So I think we should do Erasmus the Enchanter, but Stefan Stills thinks Herself the Elf would be a better opener. I mean, what do you think?
Scott, come on. I don't even like your band.
And it only gets worse when she finds out via knives that it finally happened. Someone she was with cheated on her, and not the other way around.
No, seriously. I wish I was ever half as fanatically devoted to anything as you are to Scott Pilgrim.
Ramona, he cheated on us. Both of us. No one else would have told you.
Yeah, actually, I gotta go.
And it's around here that we find out the truth about Ramona. Even though she's always moving on, she isn't that good at letting things go. Because like I said, she isn't processing anything.
Do you ever think about her?
Envy Adams? Why would I?
I don't know.
Well, do you ever think about it?
It's just, I mean, how do you get over it so fast? It's amazing. It's like a superpower.
Fast? It's been like 2 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got you now.
So this might be a good time to bring up the glow. One of the most random details in the comics is that Ramona's head just glows sometimes. And for a while we can infer that it happens in moments when she's upset about something, but we can't really tell what it is. That is until Gideon points out,
Wow, man. She's been riding the glow into subspace. This makes sense.
What? To who?
It's how I made my millions, buddy. Emotional warfare. Seals you inside your head. Just you and your issues. And once you're hit, that's it. No cure. It's chronic.
I thought you were like a music producer or something.
But this brilliant self-hater, she found a way to turn it to her advantage.
from this we can infer that it has something to do with self-loathing. Subspace seems to be this dimension that spawns out of people's emotions and displays their subconscious/dreams. If the glow represents circular thinking and self-loathing, it actually kind of makes sense that Ramona would use it to teleport to subspace. I said kind of. But you know, fun lore aside, I took a look at every single time that Ramona's head glows, and it seems to happen in 3 different kind of circumstances. When she's reminded of Gideon, when she's reminded of an ex that she particularly screwed over, or when she's jealous. And I think that jealousy carries a lot of guilt for Ramona. Like, whatever Scott could do to her, she has done it to someone else. But you get where I'm going with this? We've been talking about Ramona's baggage for a ton of minutes now, and it's a central element of the plot of Scott Pilgrim. A lot of it has very little to do with Scott or his development. Ramona, as she exists in the comic, isn't there to serve Scott at all. She has her own arc, her own shit to work through. And this monologue she delivers at the end, I think, illustrates this really well.
I guess that's my problem. I'm always trying to beat the clock, outrun the universe. Like, nothing can change me as long as I change myself first. I feel like I'm in this river, just getting swept along. And if I hold on to anyone, if I'm holding on for dear life, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm stuck. I never wanted to get stuck.
I don't know. Maybe we can get somewhere together. Maybe we can get unstuck. We'd have to be careful. It could be a bumpy ride. Could get messy, but maybe it'd be worth it. Maybe we just need to hold on.
I've never been good at holding on.
Hey, you'll get it. It just takes practice.
Hey, I have nothing to add to that. I love this exchange so much because I think it speaks to the sense of grandeur I was talking about before. Like if settling for anything isn't good enough, isn't grand enough. And I think what Scott's trying to articulate here is that holding on to someone, or even a lot of someone's, doesn't have to mean you don't get to experience new things and go on adventures, even if those adventures are of the more mundane kind. And I think that's one of the great lessons of early adulthood. Hey, I told you this comic was good. Side note, this is actually something I really like about this comic. Most stories in our media landscape would lead you to believe that once you're no longer a teenager, your coming of age formative experiences are just over. And that's not true. Like, most of my personal growth happened on my early 20s, and I think it's good to see that represented. This final iteration of my tea might be alcohol, it might not be. You will never know, YouTube censors. Point B. Ramona is a bad gay. Yeah, it isn't great bi representation. Generally, the comic falls into that early 2000s pitfall that most liberal teenagers did, which is not considering female experimentation with other women while you're already in a monogamous relationship as cheating. Like, over the course of the comic, Ramona makes out with Roxy and with Kim, and no one ever calls Ramona a cheater for those particular instances. It's just generally based on the idea that making out with a girl isn't serious, whereas making out with a guy is. Now, this monogamous BS gives me a headache because if you are committed physically and emotionally to one person, one singular person, and that's why making out with another guy is bad, then making out with another girl should be just as bad. Because, yeah, women are valid romantic and sexual partners to other women, and your girlfriend might be shock bisexual. It's very I kissed a girl, and if you guys want, there's a very good video by
Princess Weeks
that dives into this a lot deeper. I'll link it in the description below. For what it seems, at least 3 girls of the main Scott Pilgrim lineup are bi. Those are Kim, Knives, and Ramona. Kim makes out with Knives and with Ramona, which a lot of people forget, and Ramona expresses a particular interest in Kim, like several times over the course of the series, which, you know, kind of implies that she has a little crush on her.
So I guess you want to hear about me and Envy.
No, not at all.
Okay, but just in case you fight her, her weaknesses...
Ah, no, stop! Why don't you, tell me about you and Kim or something?
Kim? What about her?
You dated her.
Oh, right. Yeah. Why are you so interested in Kim anyway?
What? I don't know. Where'd Kim go? She seemed pretty wasted.
Why are you always so interested in Kim?
I like Kim.
Are you gonna marry her?
Totally.
I seriously love you.
What time is it? Is it home time?
Shut up, Scott.
Seriously, I wish I could, be you, Ramona. I mean, you're so... you know?
Kim Pine, where have you been all my life?
Make out.
Let's take subspace. Kim, you should come sleep in our bed.
God, I love them. So why then does Ramona say this?
You and her?
Oh, relax. It was a phase.
Was it, dearie? Doesn't seem like it to me. Ramona seems plenty attracted to women to this day, which I'm pretty sure unintentionally actually captures a sad truth about being bi. Compulsory heterosexuality, or comphet for short. So, how do I approach this? Well, basically because of a combination of sexism, lesbophobia, girl-on-girl experimentation is not as frowned upon. It's even kind of encouraged by the men around us. It's depicted as something that girls do to get guys' attention, or because they're just blind drunk. And, you know, since men like to gawk at it, like idiots, no one ever thinks that much of it. That's partly why it's not taken seriously enough to be considered cheating. Plenty of girls end up taking that mentality to heart. They might feel like making out with their friends at the club whenever they consume even a drop of alcohol. They might even date a girl just to see what it's like and consider themselves fully straight. This is partially because society trains us to see straightness as the default. That's comphet for you. That's also in part why, you know, any representation in children's media beyond hand-holding is frowned upon. It's controversial when straight couples fully making out doesn't even get a second glance. And that's why a lot of people don't realize there's some form of queer until their late 20s or until it's comically obvious. I realized I was pan pretty early in life, but I was still in denial for a while, and I might have sublimated it entirely if I wasn't seeing a good therapist at the time. I would have full-on denial dreams where I would, you know, make out with a girl, but I would have been, you know, disguised as a man, so I had to do it, or I would have taken like a love potion. And I still managed to convince myself that I was the straightest of straights. When I look at Ramona in the context of Scott Pilgrim, I see a reflection of how that era, and honestly most people today, see bi women as people going through a phase, experimenting, or doing sexy stuff for attention. And I see a girl convincing herself that, yeah, that's probably what she's doing or what she did. She couldn't actually be into women. Again, I don't think that was intentional. I think the idea was to portray bisexuality and these experiences as drunken mistakes that girls make and that are even kind of funny. And, you know, to make a gag out of the fact that Scott wouldn't expect Ramona to have had a sexy phase. Yeah, it's not great representation, it perpetuates stereotypes, and it's very reductive. Still, I kind of identify with it. I've met plenty of Ramonas in denial, and hell, I even was one for a brief period of time. I don't have a whole lot more to say about this, just that representation doesn't have to necessarily be good for people to see themselves in it. Point C. Ramona is a bad person. Oh man. Is it time for me to expose myself already? Okay, let's start with this. When Ramona and Scott break up, it goes like this.
Ramona! Whoa. Your hair. Hey, so, I took care of the twins. They had Kim, but, she's fine, and they told me some things. Not that everything was necessarily true, but... Ramona... I love you, okay? I love you here and now. I don't care who you are, or where you're from, or what you did. As long as you love me, right?
I've done bad things.
You both have. Everyone has.
I'm a bad person.
People can change, Ramona.
Scott, thanks.
You're welcome.
I had a good time.
Wait. What?
So, my Ramona tattoo is from this scene. Specifically, this frame, the I've done bad things one. Guys, this is going to be the section where I just am not able to be objective at all. So, bear that in mind. I said I identify with Ramona, and that only intensified when I went from my late teens to my early 20s. To put it shortly, I did some bad shit. I cheated on someone I cared about a lot. I had a borderline alcoholic phase after I broke up with them, and I had a hard rebound crush on a girl that went very, very badly. That said, I can understand what it's like to look at yourself and realize that you're the bad guy. You're the soap opera villain. You have the trail of broken hearts and bad decisions behind you. I've been saying this far, everyone makes mistakes. But certain mistakes are more stigmatized than others, either because they have a heavy impact on the people around you, or because they infringe on social norms, or both. When you make those sorts of mistakes, it changes how you see yourself. You go from a person who would never do something like that to a person who would, to a person who did. And how do you move on from that? How do you become better? I'm sure you've heard people say, once a cheater, always a cheater. And that's how you see yourself too. You're not just someone who cheated in the past. You are a cheater. And how do you convince yourself that that's not something you are? That's just something you did. Now, if you're watching this and you have been cheated on, you had a partner betray your trust, I'm really sorry. That's terrible. I'm not saying this because I want you to feel bad for the person who did that to you, or for me, or for Ramona for that matter. It's just a side of the story that you don't hear very often. And that makes for some interesting conflict. It makes for a good story. The story of someone who did something terrible and has to convince themselves that they can be better. Because otherwise, how are they going to live with themselves? So, is Ramona a bad person? I don't know. Am I a bad person? What even is a bad person? Ramona definitely grows over the narrative. She allows herself to fall in love, to begin facing her relationships, processing what she went through, what she did. And she does technically cheat on Scott, but not in a way that any of the characters find meaningful. Yeah, problematic, but we've gone over that. Yeah, she does eventually fall back into her old habits, and self-reflecting becomes too difficult, so she runs away. But the important thing is, she comes back. She has never come back before. She decides to give this relationship an honest-to-God shot and face herself in the process. Figuratively and literally. There's also the fact that, Ramona is a woman, and even fictional women can't escape sexism when people judge their character. People are often much harsher on women that have cheated in the past than they are on men. Not to say that they excuse men completely, that's definitely not the case, but there is a more, oh, it was a long time ago, he was young and dumb attitude that I see apply to men that I don't necessarily see apply to women as much. Her character arc is really interesting, and that's why I got this tattoo, to remind myself that I was this person, yes, but that I could grow up, and that I did grow up. Like, I'm now older than Ramona, which is crazy and depressing, but it feels good. I'm much happier, much more responsible with my relationships, even though I realized monogamy wasn't for me. And I'm getting married, for fuck's sakes. My sister's reaction when I told her I was getting married was actually to tell me to get away from her because I was gonna infect her with adulthood. Can you believe that? Also, I have to say, if this element in particular, or any of the other things in this comic that are emotionally challenging, upsetting, or have aged poorly, keep you from enjoying this story, that's perfectly fine. Let me elaborate. I could talk about the elements of this comic that I like and some of the weakest criticisms lobbed towards it forever, and by now it probably feels like I have. But in all seriousness, if even after all this you still don't like Scott Pilgrim, that's fine. There's a lot to criticize here and thus a lot to dislike. And if any of it is too much for you and sours the experience, that's totally understandable. What I hope I was able to express here is why this story and these characters mean so much to me, and why I feel this comic succeeds on a lot of levels. Sure, maybe some of the character arcs conclude in a rush, some of the comedy has aged badly, but this is a worthwhile story that has more depth than you would initially think. I can geek out about Scott Pilgrim all day, so if you want to disagree with me or you have your own hot takes to leave in the comments, you're welcome to. I won't promise to read all of them. I have my own broken brain to take care of, and some of the stuff that I said could really piss some people off. Legitimately and otherwise. I did have the gall to say that sexism, racism, and homophobia are all real. How very dare I? But if you have civil opinions that you want to share about this thing I like, I would love to read them. I intend to make more videos soon. I can't guarantee how soon, because this took me forever and I have my job to take care of. But, I already have some topics planned. I want to talk about this particular episode of The Office and about this musical show that no one remembers called Smash. So keep an eye out for that. The Smash one will probably come first. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this ridiculously long video. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And take care, everyone. Bye. Hey guys, I just want to take another second to credit SMEEF for the dub one more time. Their work is incredible, and without it this video would have taken twice the recording time. I will link all of their Scott Pilgrim dubs down below, and if you love Scott Pilgrim, seriously, give them a watch, they're so fun. A big shout out to the channel Breaking Copyright, royalty-free music as well. It was super helpful to the production of this video. Finally, I want to apologize if this video is a bit rambly or repetitive. It was my first ever video essay script. There are a bunch of things that I want to improve on for future videos, and I hope you see some progress on my next one. Thanks again for watching this. This video meant a lot to me, and this project kept me going during a very difficult time. Seriously, I appreciated every single one of you who made it to the end. Thank you so much. Bye!